Hello, 10th grade. I hope that you are having a marvelous Wednesday, and that if you have any questions that you remember to contact me. I would be more than happy to answer your questions, or if you want to do an impromptu Zoom meeting, just ask. And, that's an available avenue for us. And if you're not sure how to do that, just message me in the chat. We can set something up. I know that, as we work on papers and things like that, you'll probably have more questions than with reading. Also, if you're interested in doing like a lunch get together for 10th grade, that'd be both classes. Just let me know. I've had like 2 students say that they thought that that might be a good idea. And, if not, you're not going to hurt my feelings or anything. I know you have other ways to hang out, but I just want to provide that for you. If that's something that you're interested in, we could schedule together. All right. Well, let's go ahead and look at what we've got on the dock for today. Okay. So first we have your reading. So remember, you've got 2 options for The Great Gatsby. You can go with the, full book, and that's about a chapter a day. There's, I think, 1 chapter that I divided up into 2. So anywhere from like 15 to 20 pages. Okay, so it's not necessarily, 40 pages long, but it's still some reading. And then you can also choose the abbreviated version. So sometimes you're reading whole chapters, sometimes you're reading a summary of a chapter, sometimes you're reading a combination, but I tried to keep it shorter. And I will be posting as you need them, the summaries for the chapters or sections that have summaries. So either one, and if you need to flip back and forth due to the circumstances we're having, I'll let you do that. Just as long as you get the main things of the story, and then maybe when you're 30, you pick the book up again, and that's fine. That's how literature works and learning works. It's a lifelong thing. So, discussion post for Old Man in the Sea. Your answer plus 2 responses is due tomorrow on Thursday, so make sure you do that. And then thesis statement with supports for the Worldview paper is due Monday. Remember, this is a rough thesis statement and supports, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It does need to be thoughtful and the best you can think of, because then I can help you more, and then you can, improve on improvements, if that makes sense. All right, coming up, vocabulary quiz is also on Monday, open book. So Worldview sample thesis statements, these are just some reminders from the last time, and I'll put this PowerPoint up on the video today so you can look at them. Along with, I want us to think about, okay, what about supports? Well, some things to think about. There's a lot of different angles you could take with this. So I'm going to leave that a little bit more open, and if you're unsure, you can check in with me on an individual basis. You have to have 3. Okay, and each support is going to be developed into a body paragraph. Now, the ways that you can brainstorm supports, and you already know some of this, but I'm going to go ahead and just throw these out there just in case, we're all kind of having to think through things a little differently and we may be forgetting some things. So the text itself is one thing that I definitely want you to be referring to. So when you look at supports, think about the character development. Think about the plot of development. Is there a certain, plot structure, or is there a certain, way that a character is presented? Are there quotes from the narrator or the characters that could support what you're saying about the worldview of your book? And then literary devices, especially tone and mood. This helps with interpretation, because an author may write about something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they always condone it, right? So Dickens, in A Tale of Two Cities, writes about a whole lot of stuff. He writes about, um, you know, murders and rape and injustice and jealousy and just unforgiveness, all these different things, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean he is condoning them. And in Macbeth, there's some pretty horrendous things that happen. Shakespeare's not necessarily saying those things are okay. And both of those stories end differently. But I think we can say that the tone of the author, its attitude towards those things, is that they are wrong, and they're wanting the reader to see what those sins do. That's in contrast to some other writers who may write about some things, but they kind of excuse it or give, some question to, is this really wrong? And you can take this with things that are, right and good and true and beautiful. I think sometimes it's helpful to have that contrast. We tend to pick up easier on issues of evil for some reason, probably our human nature. So look at the tone, look at the mood. So like Hawthorne, he's writing about the Puritans, but did he necessarily like them? No. Did he necessarily think that they were full of grace and mercy? No. And he actually had a bias against them that at times may have had some truth in it, but that also may have had some unfairness towards them, such as, he pictures them as always grim, as always wearing dark colors, when that actually isn't quite historically accurate. So the outside sources, what you're going to do is I'm going to really want to know what the text says to support your thesis. But some things that may help you is if you find something about a particular worldview. So let's just say that your book, you're like, you know what, this tends to have more of I've heard some of you say like an evolutionary worldview. You may need to pull another source that helps you to clarify, to identify, to define that evolutionary worldview. You may also, especially as you all try to make a biblical application, you may want to pull from scripture. Okay, so those are some outside sources that you can start thinking about that will help you to develop your supports for your paper. Basically, when you come up with your supports, I want you brainstorming what made you come to the conclusion you make in your thesis. So just think of the why, think of the so what behind your thesis, and that should help you to get started. You may want to take a sheet of paper and just jot down a whole bunch of ideas. Don't worry about having a perfect 3 yet, and then that can help you develop what you need for Monday to have your 3 things by then. Okay, and they don't have to be perfect 3 things, but I want them to be the best you've got. Some of you all, your brainstorming may not be doing this on paper. I had a professor once who, when she would get a paper assignment, she said, the way that I figure out how to do my paper is I get in the car with my husband and I rant. And I complain about the paper and I talk about how stupid I think it is and why should I have to write about this topic? And she goes on and on and on and on and on until the light bulbs go off, and then she knows what she wants to write about her paper and she goes for it. So some of you all may need to just talk it out. Bug somebody in your house, or dogs are pretty understanding. The cat won't care. It'll turn around and put its rear end in your face. So I would recommend a dog over a cat. But yeah, so find somebody in your house and you can, just kind of vent, brainstorm what it is that you want to talk about, especially if you're not as inclined to write and you're more inclined to talk. That really does help some people. And then what helps some students I've noticed, if I say, hey, tell me what you're thinking, and they tell me, and then I stop them and I point out, I'm like, oh, write that thing that you just said down. Ask the person who's listening to you, if it's a human being, to kind of say back to you what they heard you say. And then that could maybe give you some ideas. So those are just some tips for brainstorming that I wanted to share with you. But I hope you have a marvelous day and a wonderful week. Tomorrow, on Thursday, I'm not going to have the typical drop by Zoom hangout just because we not had a lot of attendance with that. Mr. Bundy said we didn't necessarily have to do that anymore. But if you want to schedule one, totally fine. Go for it. But that will just help us to maybe meet at a time that is better for you guys if you need me. So, all right. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.